Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bill Chase and the Movies. And this week I'll have 5 movies to review for you, including the 10th anniversary of one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. The first movie I'll be reviewing this week, to nobody's surprise, is the highly anticipated graphic novel come to life known as Watchmen. It's a visually stunning, eye-popping epic that'll have you enamored throughout. Now, first off, I have to say I've never read the book, so I'm sorry if I sound a little stupid to you. I'll tell you loyalists out there of the book. Now, the story is that it's 1985. It's been years since America won Vietnam. Richard Nixon is still in office, and the threat of a nuclear Russian attack is apparently imminent. Watergate never happened as well. And a group of superheroes known as the Watchmen have gone underground for the most part, with the exception of the seemingly indestructible Dr. Manhattan, played by the always reliable Billy Kudrup, and millionaire mogul Adrian, played by Matthew Good. But after our next superhero known as the Comedian is murdered, another hero, the sociopathic and very intriguing Rorschach, played by former child star and 2006 Oscar nominee Jackie Earle Haley, who does extremely well here, starts to investigate, bringing him face to face with some of his ex-allies, including Silk Spectre, played by the subpar yet not terrible, like some are saying, Malin Ackerman, who Richard Roper cited as one of the worst actresses he's seen in a long time, and Night Owl, played by Patrick Wilson. I like how the set design of this movie perfectly depicted the type of world that they lived in. And I also loved the fact that it was portrayed as the big events of the 70s, never happening in the world, still had the same effect, if not worse, effect on the 80s, had Ronald Reagan come in office. And that's really something that rang out loud in this film. One of the problems, though, I did have with this film is that the whole plot of investigating the circumstances behind the comedian's death just did not generate enough interest to me as a viewer at all. As a matter of fact, I figured out right away who was behind it all, but that still didn't ruin the movie for me. Even when they got to the climax, I really didn't care. But then again, this is what saved it for me. It looked as if it was going to turn into yet another walking, talking superhero, supervillain cliche, and it was just I was banging my head. I was ready to bang my head against the seat in front of me, but then they threw me for a big loop, which I really liked, and it sparked the subject of American idealism, and the effort to drive that home here was resounding and hard, and could really spark a great debate. But I really don't think the point truly got across. Maybe I'm out of my element because I'm a Canadian, but I just don't think enough depth was there to really make any of the audience, or at least speaking for myself, understand. Another gripe I have with this film was that they tried to portray the character of the comedian in many of the flashbacks in this film, which there are many, as someone who was a victim of American idealism and what it had become, sort of like Travis Bickle, played by Robert De Niro from the classic film Taxi Driver. But whatever point they were trying to prove with the comedian, it did not get across to me at all, as I just merely found him to be a naturally horrible, vile person who didn't care about anything and barely even cared about himself. And I also found most of the flashbacks in this film, while necessary, not to have any appeal behind them. I just did not find any of the backstories to have much radiance to them like a movie like this should have. There was no lack of effort there. It was just, when you do a movie like this, you need a certain something, and it didn't have that. The most interesting character, although without a doubt, was that of Rorschach, and the only flashback I found to be of any interest. The dark savviness and eeriness to this conflicted character and all his tendencies was the closest thing to the character of Batman in the recent Christopher Nolan movies, Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, in terms of a troubled, heroic soul. And that is, and one of the things I loved about this film, and this is the thing I love the most too, was the aspect of the ex-heroes trying to fit in with the lies in the past that they have now chosen, conflicted with who they really are, trying to survive this mad day and age. And that plot really just itself was what held my interest for this film, outside of Rorschach's character. Now, don't sit now. Another thing I want to point out too is to those watching this who I know, don't say I didn't warn you. This movie is ugly and graphic in terms of its violent nature, but at least it's not always needless like a horror movie like Hostel or whatever. It's not there just to gross us out. It's there to give us a better understanding of what the world these people reside in, and that's exactly what Sin City did. However, I found Sin City to be a better film. To me, it seems the aspirations of this film as well were trying to touch The Dark Knight in terms of film itself and even box office. I think that they had really high expectations, I think overly high, or the makers of this film. This is missing the elements that made The Dark Knight, however, such a great film. An odd example I can give you, and this is just an underlying thing, was that this movie was over 2.5 hours, and it felt like it. Whereas The Dark Knight was also long itself and did not feel that way. Now, and I think that's what kept this movie from being a modern classic. Now, like most critics and even fans, there's going to be no overall decisive legacy of this movie because of its mixed reviews. What I'm trying to say is that usually a movie has a clear-cut path and clear-cut legacy it leaves behind, despite some people not liking it or not hating it or whatever, depending on the film. Like I'm sure some people don't like Citizen Kane, but either way, its legacy is that of a great film, despite some people not agreeing with that. Now, I will have to say that Haley's performance as Rorschach, however, is one thing that's indisputable here. Is nothing short of outstanding. I'd even consider a supporting actor not. And yes, I'm aware he spent the whole movie in a mask, but he really brought the character to life with that dialogue, with those movements, and even the scenes he does without it. If you even take away all the mask scenes, he is just outstanding. And those scenes alone, those scenes in the prison, I think would warrant an Oscar nomination. I think he was that good. Jackie Earle Haley, I wish he would have stuck around a little more after his downtime. It makes me just think he could have been an even greater actor, but you know what? He still got time, in my opinion. I would love to see him get another Oscar nomination. I'd like to see him win an Oscar. And he also he also delivered this was the scenes with such subtle intensity. My eyes were glued to the screen whenever he was on it, and that is the mark of a great movie character. And while some of the underlying themes of this film were drop the ball, the effort was there. So for all that, it's still a spectacle. I have no problem highly recommending this film. 3.5 stars out of 5.